Hope you guys are doing well. For this week's assignment, I'm going to introduce actually 3 assignments. This one, which is expanding the line, then there's an economic use of line, and then those 2 are going to be due in a week. And then there's the pattern portrait that's at the end of this little presentation that won't be due until the end of summer. Okay, the assignment sheets are also attached to this folder so you can look at those if you need, so you have all the instructions and everything. Okay, so first let's begin with this expanding the line. So first what I want you to do is, you've done some emotional line drawings, you've just made some marks. Now I want you to see if you can come up with some creative lines that you find interesting. This can be a doodle, this can be any kind of lines you can think of. The main thing that we're not doing here is we're not drawing any objects. So maybe I should clear up what's objective drawing versus an abstract drawing. So when you draw a house, a person, a pair of scissors, a pencil, a smiley face, a heart symbol, a eye, whatever that we can identify what the thing is, that's objective. That means we can identify the shape. For this first part, we are not drawing shapes. You are just drawing lines. If the viewer happens to see something else in there, that's on them, not on you, as long as you're thinking about not drawing things, instead just marks on the paper. Okay, so this is important. So because if I see recognizable things, you will have points taken off. Okay, so it can't be things. You are just making marks. And so for this assignment, I want you to think that more is better. More is better. And there's a lot of artists that deal with this. Sol LeWitt, artists from the 60s and 70s, really kind of hit it in the 70s, this is non-objective lines. Now, it may look like waves, you may see sand in it, you may see other things, but that's not what his intentions are. His intentions are just to make the lines. Okay. Here's another version in a painting using black, purple, and white. Here's another graphic that he does. He's a minimalist, so he tries to do the most with the least amount. Here's another piece that he did. And oftentimes, if he's going to have a show in a museum, he will just send instructions and he'll say, make 1,000 lines, not long, not short, not straight. And those are the only instructions he gives. And then the gallery or museum are to interpret that. Okay. So these are just lines, non-objective. Now please ignore these color pieces. I just wanted to kind of show you that he does this over and over and over and over again, but we're only using ink. Okay, so this is, you can use your Sharpies or your illustration pens, but that's it. But here you can tell they used a ruler too to get those really straight lines. This artist is using paint and color, but I like the swirl of these lines. I think it's interesting, and I think the variation is really nice, and that's what we're looking for here, right? We want to be able to create a design out of your lines. So you're going to have to repeat the lines, you're going to have to vary them a little bit, maybe change their direction, change the thickness. Essentially, those are lines that make up this kind of snake-like shape. These are very bold lines, and you may think of I think of power lines, I think of fire escapes, I think of other things, but there's nothing objective in here. This is not a thing, right? So that's the important part. Zigzag, maybe you might even call them nervous lines. This one's nice. And pattern is created, you know, each time it loops around, and they have a nice variation of directions of lines and thickness of lines, and they fill up the page with a lot of that. And that's another goal. If you have a lot of white space showing, I will take points off. And again, if you see things in here, that's just you. She is not drawing things. She's just making marks. But then I start to see socks and weird things like that in there. But here's another artist. So it's amazing what kind of designs you can come up with when you're just using line. This one has a little too much negative space, but the shape, the repetition, the variation is very nice. And this was done with ink, but I would rather you guys use marker and illustration pens. Tara Donovan did this with pencil, but you get the idea, right? I mean, there's all kinds of movement going on. Here's another one. Wow. The kind of more delicate and more intricate your lines are, the more people will respond to it because they understand and appreciate exactly how much time went into the design. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so these are some student examples. This one, you know, at first I really enjoy it. It has a very Dr. Seuss kind of feel to it. My problem is these little funnel-like things don't need to have patterns in them as well. There's too much white space. I know that sounds, you know, even if they did every other one, you know, that would be interesting. But yeah, too much white space. So a really good start, a kind of weak finish there. This one too, love these lines. And I think the balance of it is really nice, but too much white space, all of this. And if you squint your eyes at artwork, you can kind of see like the things that pop out, and you'll notice that it's all very heavily weighted in the corners. And then this part is just really empty. So, you know, instead of these white space with dots, what if that was all colored in, right? Or, you know, even this white space that was colored in and that was colored in. That would add more variety and honestly, less white space to the piece. This one's nice. It looks like some of my French curves were used. And this is getting a little tricky, starting to look like stars, so you got to stay away from that. But the other patterns, you know, are really quite fun. And even the circles, that's a line. It's just creating a circular shape. This was kind of groovy. Sorry, it's a little out of focus. This one, again, created with a ruler and just the ultra fine Sharpie. I love this. I really like this one. Very cool. This is another kind of Dr. Seuss one. And it feels like a lot of movement going on here. So I did put in the instructions. You can put a border on this or you don't have to. It's not mandatory, but some people like to keep a really clean edge. You can do up to an inch border. I wouldn't go any bigger than that. Okay, so most of these so far have a pretty good use of space and they're balancing it out. I don't have a problem with the variety of lines here. I am seeing some fish-like things here, which is not good, and down here as well. But the design of it, it looks a little all over the place. What do you guys think? I think if there was a little bit more organization or confidence in the direction that the student was going, I think this would be stronger. You know, I do appreciate all these patterns here, and it seems like they could have kind of continued that throughout the whole thing, and I think it would be kind of cool. Just making crosses with different elements is not necessarily going to mean it's good work. It's just going to maybe become too busy. And one thing we want to do in this class is we want to try to make our compositions and our designs kind of feel resolved. So the first thing you're going to do once you find a line quality that you like is you're going to do some thumbnails using that line and thinking about how you can fill up the whole page with it. And then what you can do is take a picture of it and send it to me, or, you know, for some feedback. And I would be happy to give you feedback. And you could do that through email, or, you know, then you could, oh, I don't know, and whatever way you can put it in discussion board. There's lots of different places you can put it. So I do want to give you feedback though. This is pretty interesting. And you know, the lines, if you looked in the corners, you can kind of see them loose. So they're straight, but they're kind of all over the place. And she just went over and over and over and over it. Really kind of cool. This one too, I think needs some more dark, needs some more lines, needs some more values. Just to, because it should not have this much negative space. And I think it's an easy fix. You know, this one I go back and forth on. I wish there was some more variety in the lines behind this, and then it probably wouldn't feel so white, because all these other parts are so awesome, and then it seems like this white square and this behind it is kind of light on the lines. Oh, that's really blurry. Sorry about that. I like those lines though. Okay, so the expanding the line is going to end up, you're going to fill the page with as much marks, much lines as you can. There can be variety, there can be a change in directions, there can be a change in thickness, many different options. The next one, this is the one that's going to be due at the end of the semester, is I want you to find a picture of someone that you want to draw. And I need you to crop that picture or print it out so that it's exactly 7 inches by 5.5 inches. And the reason I have that, again, it's 7 inches by 5.5 inches. The reason we do that is because our Bristol board is 11 by 14. Okay. Now you might need to measure your Bristol board, because sometimes it's not exactly that. But try to get, you know, as close to that as possible. You may have to cut off a row of pattern portrait. But then what you'll do is on the photo, if you print it off the computer, then you're not drawing directly on a photo. You will make a grid of 1/4 inch boxes in there. So if you, with your ruler, you tick every 1/4 inch on the top, the bottom, the left, and the right, and then connect those lines up, you will have a 1/4 inch grid over that photo. Then on an empty piece of Bristol, you grid out 1/2 inch boxes. So again, on your ruler, on the top and the bottom, you mark every 1/2 inch, and then every 1/2 inch on the bottom, left and right. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to transfer square from the photo to the square on the Bristol page. And you get what's called a pattern portrait. And so these are all, each box is a 1/4 inch. I mean, these are a 1/2 inch. Even in the white space, you have to put a mark. Now I'm showing you this one because this one, it does have some issues. One thing they did was they switched pens in the middle of their design. So if you look at the density here and the density which should be here, it's very different. You can even see right here is where they switched pens. So once you start with a pen, if it's a Sharpie, that's fine. Just keep it with the Sharpie. If you go from Sharpie to Copic or Sharpie to Micron or whatever, the ink is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so So that's off. Also, like I said, the density, this should be as dark as that, and the eyes and the eyebrows, all of that needs to be a little bit more consistent. Squint at it, that will kind of make it obvious. But I do like the variety of lines that they're using. That's very cool. Here's another one. This one is really pretty good. Again, squint at it and you'll see the lines, everything kind of blurs together. This is not an unusual process. This grid is how you can render something really precisely. But if you notice, look at this, the artist is not drawing the eyes or the eyebrows. They're just looking at the value. Okay, once you start thinking about, oh, the eyes need to go here and the mouth needs to look like that, you're going to mess it up. Sometimes it's easier to turn both your photo and your Bristol over and start that way, and don't think about what you're doing. Just literally translate the density and the shape from one box to the next. Okay? This, oops, way back. There are some really good parts to this. This, I don't want, all black going through there. I have to be able to see the patterns. So if I look at this, if I'm assessing this, they started off really good, and then it got a little bit lazy to do the top part. And so points will be taken off for that. This is hard because there's so much white on the face, but do you guys see how they drew the eyebrows? The eyebrows are better. They use, dots and stuff like that. You can use letters, you can use, anything, but try to make each box different. Do you guys see how up here they're all different, and then all of a sudden they're starting to bleed into it? This is not good. This one is beautiful, except for there's a lot of negative space. I think I told them they could leave it that, but I don't want to tell you to do that. I really do hope that even if it's one little dot you put in a box. Now squint at this one. This one's actually really nice. And they did that here, even, very light dots with some of the really fine illustration pens. Johnny Depp. Whoops. This is pretty good too. Squint at it. They did draw the eye, they could have done something a little bit more interesting there. J-Lo. Whoops. This is really good. Very good. Great execution. They got a good grade on this. This is Orlando Bloom. If you squint at it, the hair is difficult here because it kind of looks like a helmet. And then I start to see Jack White. I was going to say Jack Black, but no, Jack White, the artist. But I could be not sure. But this, the variety down here is really pretty interesting. Okay, so, the last one is Maggie Gyllenhaal, but I don't like that. So let's look at J-Lo, because this is a really good one. All right, so you find an image, print it out, and grid it up. Now, if you're savvy in computer and Photoshop, you can do that, put a grid over a photo and work off the computer if you don't have a printer. If you might have to look through magazines or something to find the right size. But do your best. Let me know if you have any specific issues with this and are unable to get what required. You need to talk to me specifically. But I won't check this. You can turn this in anytime you're done, but no later than the last day of school. Okay? Email me if you have questions.